recording. Okay, I don't know, Ray, do you want to wait a few more minutes for
we only have
latecomers?
We only have the one speaker, and I wanted to sort of wait till as many people as possible turned up.
Okay, well, we can all talk amongst ourselves for a few minutes whilst we wait for the latecomers. Give it a few minutes. We're at 37 at the moment, and looking through the list here, lots of names, people I know, so that's good to see you all here. Good to see all the regulars coming back again who've been following us these many months now. And what's Ray, what's the next month's one going to be on?
Next one is going to be on rubies.
Fantastic.
Oh, you said next month was going to be on rubies? Wow.
Okay, we're still getting people joining in, so give it another 2 or 3 minutes, I think. Wait for everybody to get going. It's only just 1 minute past at the moment, so we're on time. We're doing well.
So if we have 1 minute, I'm gonna just pop out of the picture for 1 minute.
Sure.
And I'll be back right away.
Okay.
No, I got the price of beryl. It's a type of gemstone.
Who's speaking?
Oh, okay, yeah, it's been sitting around for a bit.
Would ask everybody to please mute their computers.
I'm back.
Oh.
Okay.
My breakaway point will be 50 participants, and I'll start then, Julian.
Oh well, I don't know how long it's going to take to get to that. We're at 44 at the moment.
I can see that.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, good.
Probably, and I won't go the whole thing or anything like that. I just show up.
Please
get
mute.
into the chemicals of price of barrels and such. I even go back to neon.
Right, I've just muted a few people who needed to be muted. I might have accidentally muted Ray. That was not necessarily a good idea. There you go. Sorry about that, Ray.
I'm not nothing to there. Same results.
Done it again. Sorry, Ray. I tried to mute someone else, and someone else joined and pushed you down the list and made me mute you instead.
That's okay.
Okay, I think that's we're at 46 at the moment, and
On
try to keep things in order here. So obviously when I do the video, the live version, the recorded version of this, then obviously I'll cut all of this out. Yeah, apologies for the videos being a bit slow to go up onto the website. I just posted up yesterday, I think, or the day before, the third one, I think. On Tuesday, so that means January's, I think. On Tuesday, I will put the February and March issues will go up online, and then I'll try and get the remaining 3 online within the next couple of weeks. It does take quite a lot of time to edit and process each one. Uh, 5 minutes past. I know we're in no particular rush, but it probably would not be a bad idea.
I'll start the proceedings then, Julian.
Yep.
I'd like to welcome everybody who took some time off on a Sunday to join us to listen to the GemQuest 8. This is our 8th in a series of GEM programs who specifically are nonprofit, nonpartisan, whose aim is to educate and to bring forth as much information about each GEM group as possible by using the world's top experts in the field. And this month, we're doing the birthstone of the month, which is my birthstone, actually, Alexandrite and Chrysoberyl. And it's interesting that both these stones do produce cat's eyes. And in the early days, Kunz, in his Curious Lure of Precious Stones, wrote that Chrysoberyl cat's eye was used as a charm against evil spirits in Sri Lanka and was highly regarded in India back in the early 17th century. It's obviously revered in Russia because it encompasses in its 2 colors that it shows in different forms of light, the colors of the national flag of Russia. I have a particular love of Alexandrite, although I do not own one. And I'm very anxious to learn more today from our speaker. And unlike other programs in the past, we have only one speaker, but she's so good that we don't need anybody else. And just to sort of give you a little bit of an introduction to our presenter today, her name is Dr. Laure Kiefert, and she was first exposed to gemology when she started studying mineralogy at the Mineralogical Institute of the University of Heidelberg, Germany in 1981. So she's more than 20. She completed her master's thesis on the origin of sapphires, which means I'm probably going to try and get her involved in September when we do sapphires. In 1981, then she moved to Australia, good move, and in a different field of research, she earned her PhD in 1996 from the Griffin University in Brisbane. Then she left Australia for the other end of the world, high up in the mountains of Switzerland in 1994, and she joined the SSEF, the Swiss Gemological Institute, as their deputy director, and went on to be the director of Colored Stones department as well. During her time at SSEF, she completed her FGA in 1998, and in 2005, she went to New York to head up the AGTA Gemological Testing Center as laboratory director. She is no slouch, obviously, until she decided to return to Europe to join what we all know is one of the most famous gem labs in Europe, the Gubelin Gem Lab, as their chief gemologist in October 2009, until her official retirement last year in September. In the meantime, Dr. Kiefert has opened her own consulting company in the beginning of 2021 in Heidelberg, offering lab service and gemstone classes together with German Diamond Institute in Pforzheim, Germany. She has authored and co-authored numerous gemological publications, as well as chapters and textbooks, such as the Handbook of Raman Spectroscopy. She regularly delivers gemological lectures at conferences worldwide and has co-organized 2 gemological conferences in Switzerland and the USA. She is also on the editorial board of Gems in Gemology and the Journal of Gemology, and represents the Gubelin Gem Lab at LMHC meetings.
No more.
Please mute. In June of 2017, she was recognized and honored by giving a professorship, an honorable professorship at Tongji University in Shanghai. So we have probably the world's top expert in the subject of chrysoberyl and alexandrite, having co-authored the definitive book in that subject. So I'd like you to mute yourselves, put your screens on speaker view, and be prepared for an interesting and exciting presentation by Dr. Laura Kiefert on chrysoberyl, cat's eyes, and alexandrite. Dr. Kiefert.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. I just have to correct, I'm not on the LMHC board anymore because I cannot work for Gubelin anymore on that in that function, but I am actually ambassador of the Gubelin Gem Lab for visiting clients and being able to offer them certain conditions and whatever when they want to submit stones. But this is another subject. I'm still a little bit close with the Gubelin Lab, even though I'm retired from them. Just wanted to say that. Okay, now I start with the chrysoberyl and the cat's eyes and the alexandrite. I was a little bit, how do I say, overwhelmed. And it's always funny when you think you know so much about the gemstone and then you try to compile a presentation and you realize how little you really know and how much deeper you would have to dig to get something together. I hope I done a good job, and I start here with my presentation now. And for that, I need my glasses. So chrysoberyl is a beryllium mineral with a chemical formula beryllium aluminium oxide. Its name is derived from the Greek chrysos, which means golden, and it was initially thought to be a variety of beryl. And also, although its crystal is orthorhombic, some chrysoberyls look hexagonal due to the frequently observed cyclic twinning, which you see on the right side and also on the bottom a little bit on the left side. The optical character is anisotropic, it's biaxial positive. Refractive indices are from 1.744 and 1.753 to 1.749, 1.759. Specific gravity 3.73, the hardness 8.5, and they are colored by the trace elements. Chrysoberyl, the yellowish to brownish green variety, is colored by iron, and the alexandrite is colored by chromium. And then they can have also effects like the color change effect in the alexandrites and the cat's eyes effect in the chatoyancy in color change effect in alexandrite and the cat's eye effect in the cat's eyes. So now again, the color course, yellowish green to brownish green, is mostly iron 3+. Then there was once a very small find of bluish green chrysoberyl from Tanzania, and that color was due to the presence of vanadium 3+. Now the cat's eyes, without a prefix, is always a chrysoberyl. So you have the emerald cat's eyes and other cat's eyes, but there you have to put the name of the mineral before. And if you hear only cat's eye, they mean a chrysoberyl. The effect is caused by fine parallel needle-like inclusions that are composed of either rutile or hollow tubes. And the effect is visible perpendicular to those needles. The origin, I'd say a little something in general about this, and then later on I go to the individual ones. So beryllium is an extremely light element. It needs specific conditions to be concentrated enough to form the chrysoberyl. Therefore, this type of gemstone is extremely rare. And then if it also needs chromium for the alexandrite, then it's even more rare. The formation is at one hand in pegmatites, fluids of 500 to 700 degrees. And the major sources there are India, South Kerala, the south of India, Minas Gerais, Bahia, and Espírito Santo, all in Brazil. and Sri Lanka. Then there is also formation in contact metamorphic mica schist, acidic beryllium-rich pegmatites and ultrabasic rocks are in contact and tectonically metamorphosed. The major sources of that are the Ural Mountains, the Novello claims in Zimbabwe, Hematita in Minas Gerais, Sri Lanka, Lake Manyara, and Tunduru, both in Tanzania and Madagascar. And you can see that in some of those deposits, like the Ural Mountains, alexandrite actually comes together with emerald. And also in one of the Hematita mines, you find very, very light colored emeralds together with the alexandrite. So very often they are in combination. The chrysoberyl without the color change is generally found in secondary deposits. They are located in Sri Lanka, Tunduru, Madagascar, Brazil. Some also are found in Burma. And the funny thing is, chrysoberyl has been around for longer than the alexandrite. Sri Lanka has been known for its gemstones already for a long time, was mentioned by Pliny already 77 after Christ. It is not far known how far the chrysoberyl actually traveled, and there are no real historical jewelry pieces with chrysoberyl from Sri Lanka. But in Brazil, it's a different story. And many Portuguese jewelry pieces go back to the 18th century or even below. And that's probably because the Portuguese took all the chrysoberyls over to Portugal and they made these pieces out of them. And many of these are many of these are still available and can be seen and even traded. So we have on the bottom, we have some of those pieces from the 18th century. 1770, that's quite old, and alexandrite was only found in 1833, so only the chrysoberyl, not the alexandrite back then. Now we come to the emerald, the alexandrite, which is also called emerald by day and ruby by night. It is an often cited sentence whenever you hear about emerald alexandrite, and it's beautifully describing the change from green, mostly a yellowish green, mostly a bluish green in daylight, to red, violet or purplish red, to brownish red in incandescent light. Now the cause of the color, I already mentioned, it is chromium 3+. It is the same element that causes ruby to be red and emerald to be green. In emerald, the distance between the chromium and the oxygen atoms is larger than that in ruby, and the distance between chromium and oxygen in alexandrite is somewhere in between. So you can see that on the UV spectrum here, you have the absorption. How do I get down? Do you see this? Do you see this arrow? Can I work with that arrow? Hello, hello. Somebody tell me.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
sorry.
working.
Yes, I forgot I'd muted myself. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. So you have the ruby here, and you see that the absorption maximum is in the green. So the green is gone, and that's why you see red. Then you have the emerald on the bottom, and you see that the absorption maximum is in the red, and the minimum is in the green. That's why you see the emerald green. And the absorption here, you can see that it's right in the middle between those two. And this is why sometimes you can see it green and sometimes you can see it red, depending on the light source that you're using. Now we go more to the alexandrites. The first one, as I mentioned, was found in 1833 by a farmer in the Tocovaya River in the Ural Mountains. Emerald mining was already going on since 1831, but alexandrites haven't been found there yet. Then it took several months until they realized that this mineral was something different, and it was identified as chrysoberyl. And because of its colors, red and green, which were the colors of Russia at the time of the Tsar, they named it alexandrite, but only again in 1842, not right after they found it, but only a few years later, until after they made a lot of analysis and whatever with it. And they honored young Alexander, who later became the new Tsar Alexander II. If you are interested in more of this story, Karl Schmetzer in his book has a great chapter about it, about the history with facts and with everything. And as you know, the book is not available anymore as hardcover, but Dr. Schmetzer let me know that it is available online. And if you're interested, you just ask me, and I give you the link to the publication company, the publishing company that gives it out online. So here, this is where the origins are from. You have the Ural Mountains that I mentioned already. You have two deposits in India, and you have the Sri Lankan deposit, and you have a small deposit in Burma. Now, the Sri Lankan deposit is quite interesting, and maybe also the Indian ones, because in the Ural Mountains, I mean, alexandrites were very rare. There were not so many, but somebody in the 1890s wrote that they have found Sri Lankan alexandrites in the Ural Mountains in the 1890s. So about 60 years after the original alexandrites were found. And that is probably due to the fact that the alexandrites were not interesting for any other country, but for Russia, because of the colors, the green and the red, which were the state colors. In Brazil, you have Minas Gerais and Bahia as a source. In Bahia, it was found in the 1970s, and in Minas Gerais only in 1987, so much, much later than the other deposits that I mentioned before. Then we come to Africa. We have Zimbabwe, which is probably the oldest one here. The Novello claims in Zimbabwe, they were from the 1960s. Then Tanzania, Lake Manyara was found around about also in the late 60s, early 70s. Then we have a deposit here, Mananjari in Madagascar, a very small deposit that is not producing anything anymore now. And then you have Tunduru and Ilakaka. And for Tunduru and Ilakaka, you also know from the sapphire finds. And they were both in around about 1998. So very much later than the other finds of alexandrite. The GIA has published something a little while back, 2019, and they have studied the colors of alexandrite, and they came up with some which they claim are typical colors for the certain deposits. And you can see that they have, for Sri Lanka, they have a cool color and a warm color, and the warm color has sort of a yellowish green to sort of brownish color. But the other ones from Brazil, from Russia, from Tanzania, India, and the cool one from Sri Lanka are a little bit the same. And I don't know if anybody is able to judge from the color, if an from the color only, if an alexandrite is now from Russia or if it's from Brazil. Alexandrite origin determination is quite hard because also the inclusions are not so clear, and mostly in all the major labs to do origin determination, they do it with laser ablation ICP-MS. So now alexandrite from Russia. See if I can minimize this one, alexandrite from Russia, yes. We have nice twins. We have the purplish colors here. we have a nice green color changing to a nice purplish or purplish red color. The best colors, of course, when it goes more into the red, and we had very rarely, but once in a while, we had a red with a tiny touch of purple color in incandescent light. Here are the maps showing where it comes from. I showed it on the big map before in the Ural Mountains. And you have the various mines here, the Mariinsky mine, the Sarsky mine, this mine, and that's the Tokowaya River. And then here you have the mines, and you can see the green is where they find only emeralds, and the blue is where they find emeralds together with alexandrite. I don't read that for you. You can read that yourself, that the mines are mostly situated in a belt of amphibolites. Okay, now, for over a century, it was only open pit mining at the emerald plus a little bit of alexandrite mines. Only in 1965, underground mining was developed. And for several decades thereafter, the Soviet government exploited the mines not for the emerald and not for the alexandrite, but for beryllium and molybdenum, for weapons and for technical use. Before that, it was also, the mines went on and off. They were producing, they were not producing. And later on, after 1989, it was about the same. And it's still going on like this today. That they have, like, for 1 or 2 years, they have a company that invests into the mine, and then they're either chasing out of the country, like the Tsar Emerald Company, or they just give up, or whatever. So this Willow knows that. She was there too. We made a nice visit to this Ural Mountain mines in 2007, when the Tsar Company had the mine, which is a Canadian-based company. And this is the landscape, and here are you see the tailings of the mining process that are coming down here. We were taken underground a few hundred meters below surface. And before that, we had to dress up, like for emergencies in case anything happens. It's 12 degrees around down there, and we had to wear several layers of clothing, and we had to put emergency things and everything on us. So, and below it's actually quite well maintained and quite well built up. So you have here the tunnel going further into where they are working. You have the little cars here with the ore that they are taking to the surface. And actually these little cars in German, they are called Lore. Here we are. That's Karl Schmetzer here on that side. That's me, and that's the assistance of Mimi O Yang from Hong Kong in the background. And we had to wear, I think, 3 pairs of pants underneath and 4 jackets or something on top. And we had the belt with the emergency equipment here, the helmet with the light and everything. And in the back, we had, I think, some food or something. So it was quite interesting the way what the miners have to do every day. And this is how it looks below. Here you have the picture of the wall where they were actually mining. And here you have a piece of emerald. So it's mostly concentrated around emerald, but the occasional alexandrines are there to be found. This is a sorting plant there. The ore goes in here, it goes to the sorting plant, and there you have several conveyor belts parallel, about 5 or 6, I think. And you have people sitting there, sometimes 4 people, sometimes only 2. And they shovel out the emeralds or alexandrites, if they find any, and they drop them into here. And at each other end of the conveyor belt, there is an armed guard with a machine gun. So no chance for them to take anything into their pocket. Here is alexandrite from Russia that they found there. So you have a little something with a very nice color change. You also have here a pretty big rough piece, and you have here quite a big rough piece. So they do find big pieces in there, but just not as often as they find the emerald. Here, some brooch from 1860. It was sold at Sotheby's in Hong Kong. Sorry. It was sold at Sotheby's in Hong Kong. And this same stone was certified by the Göbelin Gem Lab at the same time about. Here's some more images of rough stones. You can see here quite a big piece of alexandrite that comes from a London museum, I think. And another one here, one of those nice cyclic twins. Another one, the cyclic twins here. And in the center, it looks almost like a trapeze. And when you look in immersion, you can see the different directions of the twinning. You can see the different colors, the pleochroism of the sample. You can also see that the growth lines go across. And whenever it makes an angle, here also, that's where the crystal is. And between the pieces, you have the twin lines. Here another image of color zoning. They are very strongly color zoned very often. And you also have here again the color zoning and the pleochroism and the angle together. So it doesn't only have a 60-degree angle, it can also have a more than less than 90-degree angle. Now some data. In daylight, it is green to bluish green to blue green. In incandescent light, it is violetish purple to reddish purple. Long wave UV, red, sometimes not very strong, sometimes medium. Short wave, also sometimes there is no fluorescence, sometimes it is medium, and it's patchy yellow. Then inclusions we have knee-twinned crystals, we have transparent flakes, we have brown platy mica, we have fluid inclusions with bubbles and lamellae, we have reflected needles and platelets, we have primary 2- and 3-phase inclusions, we have parallel needles, we have streaks of grayish particles, healed fissures connected by delicate tails, and primary negative crystals. Normally it is quite how do you say, quite included, the scene. And we jump already to the next deposit, the Brazilian one. And here, the deposits are distributed within the states of Bahia and Minas Gerais and Espírito Santo. The Corrego de Fogo deposit near Malagueta in Minas Gerais was already discovered in 1975. Its peak production was from 1980 to 1982. The finest faceted stones include a 13 and 15 karat alexandrite, as well as an over 18 karat cat's eye alexandrite. The hematita mine was discovered in 1986 and is probably the richest alexandrite concentration which was ever found. Hematita is known for the finest alexandrite and cat's eye alexandrite, including many 10 karat and some 25 to 30 karat pieces. And they have an extraordinary color change. The deposits in Bahia state are generally smaller than those of the Minas Gerais, and in the Carnaíba mine, alexandrite is found as a byproduct of emerald mining. As I mentioned before, sometimes it is connected together with emerald mining in biotite, phlogopite, and phlogopite talc schists. There is a mine in Hematita, which I know the former owner of, and they actually have beautiful alexandrites. And they also showed me very light green emeralds, the type where you don't know if you still call it emerald because it's very light, but it's definitely emerald, and it's very, very clean material also. So the discovery of the hematita mines in 1986 led to tumultuous invasion of several thousands of garimperos. Because of the unexplained legal situation and the increasing tension and violence that was there, the government was forced to close the area in 1987. On average, one person a week was shot to death. After the closure, many of the garimperos stayed, hoping that the area would reopen. The military put a barbed wire fence around the area and tried to control thousands of hungry and angry miners. Then the mine was reopened by a group around the geologist Warren Brennan, and about 150 of the garimperos were let in. 2,000 arrived soon afterwards, and the violence escalated again, so that the army closed the area again. The estimated production from these two invasions was about 50 kilos of rough. Later, the deposit was mined mechanically by mining companies, but today the detrital reserves are assumed to be exhausted. So here we have the deposits in Brazil. So we have on the bottom, we have Espírito Santo with only 3 mines. Then you have Minas Gerais with quite a lot of mines, and also Bahia with quite a lot of mines. Here we have a typical deposit. We have here where they find the alexandrites, and we have here the alluvial that comes from down here. These are the colors that you can find. It's probably a little bit more green than I see on my screen. On the left side, you see 15.5 carat Brazilian alexandrite ring, which was sold for over $900,000 in May 2012 at a Christie's auction in Hong Kong. And they are usually much less included than the Russian alexandrite. Some of the inclusions of the Brazilian alexandrites, these two on the left, these 4 images on the left are from hematita, and the 2 on the right are from Bahia. So in hematita, you see groups of slightly rounded apatite crystals accompanied by a comet tail consisting of dust particles. Then we have zircon crystals. We have structural clouds, and we have milky bands. We have a very, very lively inclusion seen in the Bahia samples with greenish plates or stacks of mica all over. Here is one of those green mica, and in the background here you see zircons again. We have here some data for the hematita only. I didn't include the Bahia in that one. So the color in daylight is green to bluish green to greenish purple. In incandescent light, it's violetish purple to reddish purple. Long wave has a weak to medium red fluorescence. Short wave, none to weak, yellow patchy fluorescence. Then we found zircon, apatite, fluorite from the literature. We couldn't identify any. We have the structural clouds. We have negative crystals. We have 2- and 3-phase inclusions. We have calcite again from the literature, was not found by us. And we have pronounced growth structures. And we jump to India. Alexandrite from India was first reported from the Samunda gem mines. They are situated in the Orissa state. In 1996, the Indian tribal people found alexandrite in the area of Vishakhapatnam and the Araku Valley. This is also in Orissa state or in the south. After extensive raining, one of this illegal mine caved in and many people died. As a consequence, the area was closed by the government for any mining activity. So this was a good deposit. There was a lot coming out. but it didn't work for a long time. In 1999, the government came up with new mining regulations, and not before 2000, small areas in that area were allowed to reopen with organized mining and strict governance. A new open mine is reported from the Diobuk area, so again in the north, in Orissa state. And in the tsunami of 2004, the Visakhapatnam coastal mines were completely destroyed, so nothing coming out of there even after they had the regulated mining. In 2005, new deposits were discovered about 60 kilometers inland from there, close to Nasipatnam. Today, Indian alexandrites primarily come from there. On the right, you see an image that I received from Gagan Choudhary from India. When he was there in the mid-90s, at the end of 90s at the Visakhapatnam mine, which does not exist anymore. Here we have some, and there is also a deposit in the south of India, which I have not found so much literature for, but this is also quite producing at the moment. Now we have inclusions there. We have well-formed brown zircon crystals with equatorial tension cracks, again zircons. We have rounded platelets in interference colors. These are quite typical for the Indian deposits. We have parallel arrangements of brownish platelets seen in bright field, and in dark field they are then whitish. And again, we have those little irregularly shaped or rounded platelets. They are aligned with very elongated platelets and reflective needles. That is something that is quite common in the Indian deposits. So the color, yellow-green to green to bluish-green in daylight, violet to purple in incandescent light. Fluorescence is none to medium, a bright red, and shortwave, none to medium yellow. Inclusions, as we saw before, are zircons, round to very long, to very elongated platelets, iridescent needles in interference colors, white fibers or tubes, structural clouds, parallel reflective needles, black particles in repeated streaks, brown particles in bands. Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, they are mostly found alluvial, but they come from two different deposits, and you can see that from two different geological deposits. And you can see that in the colors as well. You have at the one hand what the GIA calls the cool colors, with the bluish green to the purple, and then the warm colors with the yellowish green to the brownish purple, which is mostly more iron rich than the other ones, than the bluish green ones. So one of the most famous gem localities in India, in Sri Lanka, is Ratnapura, called the City of Jewels, capital of the Sabamala district and central point for the gemstones in Sri Lanka. The first confirmed alexandrite findings were in the early 1880s from the Moravak Korala district, about 50 kilometers south of Ratnapura. But as I mentioned before, in the 1860s and 70s, large amounts of Sri Lankan alexandrite were supposedly reported from Russia, the only place at the time where these gems were really valued. So they were reported in Russia, but they came from Sri Lanka. So they must have been known already before the 1880s. Later, alexandrite was found in several places within the Ratnapura gem fields, including Balangoda and Kuruvita, and additional findings are near Hovarana and Bogavantalava, which belongs to the western and the central province. Most of the Sri Lanka gem deposits are found within the highland complex. It includes supracrustal rocks and a variety of igneous intrusions metamorphosed under granulite facies conditions. So again, you have these special conditions which you need to have to form alexandrite. The alexandrite findings of the Ratnapura field are classified as alluvial gem deposits and consist of unconsolidated alluvial sediments located within the highland complex. Here you have a few inclusions of the Sri Lankan alexandrites. You have, at the one side, you have the brown zircon crystals, again, zircon crystals with tension cracks around them. Then you have crystal inclusions which we could not identify. They are unknown, but they look like a little dancer, like a wire dancer or something. We could not identify those. Then we have structural clouds with bluish white streaks. We have healed fissures with oriented two-phase fluid inclusions, or healed fissures with white fragment-like and smaller droplets. And we have reflective particles arranged in sort of ladder-type formations, which is something that can be considered not typical for Sri Lanka, but it does not occur in many other deposits. Here we have the color green to yellowish green to brownish green. We have violetish purple to brown purple in incandescent light. We have a none to weak long wave fluorescence, red, and we have none to weak short wave fluorescence, yellow and patchy. The inclusions are zircons, sillimanite was found, primary 2 and 3 phase fluid inclusions were found, structural clouds, stringers of grayish particles, needles and ladder type particles, healed fissures with 2 and 3 phase inclusions. These expressions like ladder type and so on are expressions that have been used for the Gubelin Gem Lab so we know all what we are talking about. But I think the image here shows it very nice. It is like a ladder where you can climb up. Zimbabwe, one of the older African deposits, located in the Masvingo area here. And here you have a geological plan of the Novello claims, and here is where the workings of the chrysoberyl is. It produces beautiful crystals, as you can see on the left side. And the faceted samples are also okay, but they are small and they are mostly heavily included. These are very small crystals, probably also why the photo is so blurry. If you blow them up, they just don't come out properly. 0.2 carat, 3 carat, 0.3 carat, somewhere around there for the small one. Inclusions, I don't have so many of those. A lot of them are phlogopite mica. They are quite frequent. And here again, phlogopite mica. And here the same with cross polarizers. You can see that they are different from the host where they are in, from the alexandrite. Now we come to Tanzania. Here, a well-known prospector in East Africa has found the first emeralds from Tanzania in 1969. The deposit is located in Lake Manyara. Later, alexandrite was found there too, and the first detailed characterization of the Lake Manyara emeralds and alexandrites, again together, are given by Professor Bank and Professor Gubelin in 1974 and 1976. Over 1,000 carats of alexandrite have been mined in Lake Manyara in the past, and today there is only very little production. The Tanzanian online daily news from November 29, 2009 announced that the emerald and alexandrite mines should be closing soon to pave a way for the expansion of the Lake Manyara National Park. So the mines are now situated in the national park. One of the more recent sources of alexandrites was discovered near Tunduru in the south. Tunduru produced a large quantity of sapphires, or produces a large quantity of sapphires, spinels, garnets, and chrysoberyls since 1993. And some outstanding findings of alexandrite and blue-green vanadium-colored chrysoberyl was found there as well. An extensive study of these chrysoberyls from Tunduru is given by Fenninger 2000, which was a student at the Basel University, a student of Professor Henny at the time. And she has, I think they published the paper. So here you have Lake Manyara in the north, and you have Tunduru in the south. Lake Manyara deposit, you have weathered host rock here, showing darker bands of alexandrite and emerald mining, emerald-bearing veins. These darker bands here, and Quentin White was taking that photo. So on the bottom left, you see miner removing the dark gem-bearing rocks from the overburden, and in the top right, you see the Ruvuma River in the south of Tanzania, Tunduru, where gem gravels are found on both sides of the river. So the left side is the Lake Manyara deposit, and the right side is the Tunduru deposit. Here are inclusions again. The top row is from Lake Manyara. The bottom row is from this is not supposed to be Ilakaka. I'm sorry. This is supposed to be Tunduru. So we have here well-developed euhedral prismatic apatite crystals with smaller ones attached. We have perfectly developed prismatic apatite crystals with the more tabular crystals on the one side. We have reflective particles and parallel needles. Excuse me a moment. I think I have mixed up something here. Let me just quickly scroll forward and then I come back. I think I have missed out on the Tanzanian inclusions. No, I have not. Excuse me. So the green well-developed crystal inclusions in Tunduru. We have wavy stringers of grayish reflective particles in Tunduru, and we have repeated triangular planes here. So we have in Lake Manyara, we have bluish green to yellowish and brownish green. And we have purple to brown purple. So there is a bit of a brownish component. In Tunduru, we have green to slightly yellowish green to brownish green, and in incandescent light, purple to brownish purple. The fluorescence in the Lake Manyara deposit is weak to medium and red. In short wave, weak to medium, patchy yellow. And in long wave, sometimes, in Tunduru, you sometimes have no UV fluorescence or a weak one, red, and in short wave, patchy yellow. In Lake Manyara, you have apatite, you have brown particles in bands, you have phlogopite, you have black particles in streaks, you have zircons, and you have reflective needles and particles. In Tunduru, you have grayish particles, so these ones are more brownish, these ones are more grayish, and they are as stringers or veils. You have healed fissures with coarse white crystals connected by tails. You have structural clouds, you have bluish veils, you have sectors or bands, and you have pronounced growth structures, straight, angular, step type, like as opposed to the Lake Manyara deposit, the Tunduru alexandrites are mostly very clean. We come to Madagascar. This is something that you probably all know. Madagascar was together with Sri Lanka, South India, and Tanzania over 160 million years, 65 million years ago. And that's why sometimes it is also normal to see that the inclusions from the different deposits are not so much different in the stones. And then we have here in Madagascar, we have the Mananjari region, where emerald mining started in the early 1960s. South of Mananjari, alexandrite was found much later in 1998. So according to Alex Leuenberger, only several hundred grams of alexandrite rough material was available in this area in 1999. But the Madagascar's version of gold rush was when blue, yellow, and pink sapphires were discovered in Ilakaka. So it was still a gold rush, but the alexandrite rough are not so many. Now, since the late 1998, significant amounts of chrysoberyl, including the cat's eye material, and some alexandrite originate from the Ilakaka alluvial deposit. Here you have the map of Madagascar, and you see Ilakaka here in the south, and you see Mananjari here in the east. I don't have any images from the Mananjari deposit. It's supposed to not produce anymore. Interesting is that it is also the Mananjari deposit is also one where they also find emeralds. Okay, now to Ilakaka. This is much more and much better documented. Small amounts are found. Ilakaka, together with other gems like sapphire, in alluvial gravel. Here is one of the largest mining fields or mines in Ilakaka, which is called the Swiss Bank. This is a photo by the National Geographic, which reported about this one. And you can see the big hole that they dug, and you can see all the miners or all the people working there lined up to carry the gravel to the top and then sieve it. Here you have a heavily worked area where you have the individual mining going on. And this is also in Ilakaka. Ilakaka is quite interesting in the way the sapphire and gemstone rush more or less destroyed the landscape and made out of a little village, a big town. Again, Ilakaka, they also wash the gems in the river. And here's a miner with everything he found on in the day. So there are some sapphires in there, and probably maybe an alexandrite if he's lucky, some chrysoberyl, pink sapphires, and so on. Inclusions, you have iridescent parallel needles and platelets. You have iridescent platelets from round to very elongated. You have twin planes and associated concentrations of needles and platelets. You have a group of negative crystals there. You have swirl or treacle-like growth structures, and in the center here you see a microcrystal. And you have again, like in India, you have the ladder type formations, like in India. Here are the two deposits and the inclusions. Ilakaka, green to yellowish green to brown green in daylight. Violetish purple to brown purple, mostly violetish purple to brown purple in incandescent light. In Mananjari, you have greenish blue to bluish green to green. So bluish green is the most common, and you have violetish purple to purple in incandescent light. Long wave is none to weak in Ilakaka and none to medium in Mananjari. Again, red in long wave and patchy yellow in short wave. Inclusions include in Ilakaka feldspar, swirl-like growth structures, brown particles in bands, 2- and 3-phase inclusions, black particles in streaks, grayish particles in needles, very small iridescent platelets, stringers, or ladder types. In Mananjari, you have white fibers and tubes. You have iridescent long and thin needles. You have iridescent platelets, round to very broad and elongated. You have structural clouds and you have grayish particles. So it's a little bit like in India with the two deposits where you have the south with more the Ilakaka type, or in Tanzania, Tunduru, more the Ilakaka type inclusions, because that once was together. And Mananjari sounds more like the Lake Manyara, or like the more northern deposit in India. Good. Now we go a little bit further. We are through the deposits that are there, and I showed you a little bit of what they could look like, the stones, the inclusions. Now, what makes a chrysoberyl and what makes an alexandrite? Of course, when it's called alexandrite, it goes up immensely in price. And especially in Sri Lanka, there are chrysoberyls with only a weak color change, and also not the beautiful green, bluish green to the beautiful purple, purplish red. The gem labs are always challenged by the dealers, by the trade, if the stone can be called alexandrite, and they have to decide if it can still be considered alexandrite. It would, of course, as I said, increase the value tremendously. The stone on the left is one of those stones. It probably would not be called alexandrite in every gem lab, but it could be called alexandrite in some gem labs. Another criteria, of course, is the chromium content, the UV spectrum, to see if it fulfills these criteria to be called an alexandrite too. Sometimes you have a color shift from a yellow to a brown, and then that's where, or a color change from a yellow to brown, where it is really hard to decide if this can still be called an alexandrite. And also if the color change is extremely small, if it's just a tiny little touch that becomes a different color, then you talk about a color shift, and it has to have a color change. So there's also sort of a limit how much you can call an alexandrite or not. And the next one is imitations. Of course, every gemstone gets imitated by something, and then we have natural and synthetic imitations. We have as natural imitations oft color change garnet, and we have color change sapphire. It is not commonly used that you take natural stones and try to sell them as alexandrites, because color change gemstones in themselves have quite a value. Synthetic, you have the corundum, the synthetic corundum, which is probably one of the most common imitations of alexandrite, and it was already used in the 1900s. And a lot of the old jewelry from Russia that you find from the 1920s and so on actually don't have alexandrites, but they have those color change synthetic corundum in them. So if you ever get one to evaluate, or if you ever get one in your hand, make sure it is not a corundum, a synthetic one. And synthetic spinel is also partly used, but the color change is not quite as, say, deceiving than the corundum one is. Now, basic gemological testing should help for all of them. If not, you still have FTIR spectroscopy to distinguish between those imitations. Now, synthetics, we have 3 different types of synthetics for alexandrite or chrysoberyl. We have, on the one hand, we have the Tucholsky method, which is a pulling method, which is a little bit like Verneuil, except that they make larger crystals and they are pulled out of a melt instead of the melt dropping onto a seed plate. So you can get bigger crystals, and you can see here that they also can create cat's eyes. They are mostly inclusion-free, and they have few particles only, or maybe you find tiny bubbles in them. And they have, well, depending on how they are cut, they can have the curved lines. Now there is a horizontally oriented crystallization technique, which is considered as a variant of the floating zone method. This method is used for the growth of large crystals. You see one on the left side here. Large crystal plates of compounds with a high melting temperature. The crystals are grown in containers of molybdenum and tungsten. This avoids the use of the expensive crucibles that are made of platinum or iridium. The method allows the production of very homogeneous chromium and vanadium-bearing crystals of 400 to 500 grams. There has been commercial production and release of rough and faceted material to the international market since 1994. So these are relatively new. And there is an article, if you want to know more about these synthetics, Schmetzer et al. 2013 in the Journal of Tomology, I think, or in GEMS Entomology. I think it's a journal. Then here, the first description of flux growth of chrysoberyl dated back to the mid-19th century. Mid-19th century. But the modern flux synthetics of chrysoberyl and alexandrite started only in the 1960s. So these were more experimental here, but 100 years earlier than the actual production started. So there is a flux grown synthetic chrysoberyl that was from Bulgaria, and often you see in these synthetics sort of residues from the flux. Then here you have some flux-grown synthetic alexandrites from a company called Creative Crystals, which is in the US. And here some more Russian flux-grown synthetic alexandrite. They may occur as single crystals, but they can also look like cyclic twins. And then now, if you have these cyclic twins and you compare it with the Russian alexandrite that I showed before, it may be quite hard to distinguish between them. Here you see color zoning with the flux residue on the top. And you have these veil-like healed fissures that are flux residue actually. So here you have to watch out, but there is also again FTIR that can distinguish between natural and synthetic alexandrite. We come to treatments. There is not so much, luckily. Only exceptionally, heat treatment or irradiation is reported for chrysoberyl. One such case is light greenish yellow stones. About SSF has recently reported about those. They were heated. And these on the right side, the photo shows heated chrysoberyl from Tanzania and from Madagascar. So both of them were heated, but you can see that the effect is not really great. So it's not something that will be done. Maybe they were more included, they got clearer through the heating, but I don't know if there was a real color improvement in that. But in the late 1990s, that was quite interesting. A lab alert was issued by AIGS at the time about brown chrysoberyl cat's eyes that came on the market in large amounts, and they were supposed to have received the color by irradiations. They turned brownish with irradiation, and the cat's eyes were radioactive. And as I said, large amount, hundreds of carats were supposed to be on the market at the time, and nobody really knew if that was true or not. But actually, we had a piece one time, and it was really reacting to the Geiger counter, so it was radioactive. So if you see reddish brownish chrysoberyl cat's eyes, be careful. I think they stopped irradiating them, but I'm not sure. Things always pop up again and again and again. Then one of the more common treatments that you find is fissure treatment with oiling of fissures, which is in emeralds, which is any gemstone that has fissures can be oiled or also resin treated, but from the alexandrites, it's mostly oil that is reported. So you can see on the left side a fissure that would extend a lot longer when it wouldn't be clarity enhanced with oil. And here you see one of those fissures that is already drying out, where you can see the dendrites that show that in here, there is still some areas that have the oil inside that make the stone more transparent. Recently, some papers also mentioned the heat treatment and diffusion of chrysoberyl and alexandrite to improve its properties. But so far, such treatments are not carried out on a large scale. Especially the diffusion seems to be only experimental. Now, the last point that I have on my agenda is to you. Where did chrysoberyl play a major role in the 2000s? Do you have an idea? Can you unmute the people?
We're on mute.
So anybody have an
Chance where
idea?
you get to talk.
Anybody have an idea? Okay, I give you.
I
the
think
answer.
it was for beryllium treatment of sapphires. They
You are
used.
right. Perfect.
Yeah.
So at the end of 2001, we discovered a new treatment, turning purplish and pink stones to nice orange or paparacha colors. It took a while to determine, that's why I say at the end of this 2001 it was discovered, but it was probably at the end of the 1990s when it was discovered by the treaters. And they found it by coincidence. They heated some chrysoberyls together with sapphires, and they discovered that the stones around those chrysoberyls turned this beautiful color. So then they started to grind chrysoberyl and put it over the stones and mix the stones with it. And later on, then they used the beryllium by itself. So this is some of those images. You can see the diffusion didn't go far inside the beryllium diffusion, but you can see that it changed the color into an orange. And here, that's the surface of a stone, highly heated. It needed high temperature to do that. They did that in Thailand at the time when high heat was getting more and more popular, and it had to be recut after this treatment, after this heating. And sometimes you find that it was not recut all the way, and you find some of those areas, and you can see here the refaceting was not done properly, and you can see the rough areas here. And this was it from my side. There is the answer again. This is the first slide, the first picture here that I showed. And this was the outcome from it. So you can see not everything changed its color, but some of them got really the beautiful paparacha and orangey color that was there. So that was it. My acknowledgements go first of all to Ray to invite me to give this webinar. Then I would like to thank many of my friends who helped me with collecting images and gave me advice and helped me a little bit further. The best one, of course, was Dr. Schmetzer, the best source. My former colleagues at the Gubelin Gem Lab were helping me out with photos, the inclusion photos especially. Dr. Chemnitsky from the SSAF Swiss Gemological Institute helped me with one of the presentations he did, so I could use some of his slides and did not have to reinvent the wheel. Richard Hughes at Lotus Gemology supplied me with some of the images. Gagan from GJPEG, and the internet is an excellent source for everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you actually very much. That was a very good and comprehensive presentation, but I had a question for you, if you don't mind. As an amateur gemologist myself, I don't have a grasp on the real prices, but I'm wondering if you could give us some idea of what you know the world prices are for good color change alexandrites and what the average sizes of cut stones of them are.
This is a little bit hard for me to answer because I worked in those labs where you only get to see the biggest ones.
Okay.
So the majority of the stones, I think they are in the 1 to 2 carat range. And I know that for a while, when I was working at the HCTA in the US, I was told that most of the stones at the time were coming from India. But now Gagan told me that there is actually not much coming from India. The same is for Brazil. Brazil is a large source, but when I talk to the people who sell them, they say there is not much coming from. Russia is intermittent. They produce and then they don't produce, and they produce and they don't produce, but mostly emeralds and alexandrite as a byproduct. I know that there is quite a bit coming from Madagascar and Tanzania, but again, also only as a byproduct and not as a major source. So I really cannot tell you that Zimbabwe one is not active anymore. So I really cannot tell you which one produces the most. But when I go to the shows and I see people who have alexandrites, they are mostly, I have the feeling, from Brazil or India, and they are mostly in the 1 to 2 carat range.
And what is the average pricing on these?
Pricing? No idea.
Any sense of what the prices of them are? This is something I'm trying to get a grasp of.
I don't really know. Actually,
Okay.
that was never one of my focuses.
No. I'm not trying to put you in a corner. I'm just trying to find out. And actually, if anybody here who's in the audience would like to throw that out there, it would be really interesting to learn, because I've not been able to afford one. They're
Well,
just
yeah.
exorbitantly expensive.
Yes,
sure.
Ray, can I talk for a few minutes?
Yes.
The 1 carat to 2 carat range, which I came across with good color change, in more than 60% color change, it's around 2,000 a carat for a carater.
For a 1 carat stone.
Yeah, 1 carat stone, which I clean pieces. Yeah.
Okay. I
It's
thought
a
it
good,
was
more than 60% color change.
okay. I thought it would be higher.
Me too. Actually thought it'd be much higher.
It is a wholesale price, like
Oh, the
from
wholesale.
dealer to,
Okay.
yeah.
So by
dealer
the
to
time
dealer.
it's at the
Dealer
it's
to
at the jeweler, it's in the 10,000
Yeah, it's
range.
almost 3
Yeah.
4 times more.
Yeah, there you go. That now makes more sense.
Yeah.
And the other
That's
thing,
fair.
that was that made me curious was, because I love phenomenal stones, is that a lot of the stones you talked about had fibrous parallel inclusions, and I'm wondering if there's because of that, there's a lot of cat's eye coming out of those mining sites, or is it only cat's eye chrysoberyl?
The fibers must.
I've never seen a cat's eye alexandrite except maybe this picture.
It's very, very rare, and the fibers must be very dense. If there's only a few needles, parallel needles in there, it doesn't make a cat's eye.
No.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for coming.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Wait a moment.
Thank you,
There are
Lou.
a couple of questions that
Okay,
have
let's
been
answer
left
those
in the
questions
chat.
if we can.
Okay, so obviously because of time, I'll just read them out. Michael Herring has asked, GIA told me years ago that natural alexandrite was hydrothermal growth. They gave me a natural call on a Brazilian stone I thought was synthetic because it was hydrothermal growth, and that there were no hydrothermal synthetics. Is this true?
Well, I have not heard of hydrothermal synthetics. There are none.
Okay. And the last question, a simple one. Was alexandrite used in the Russian royal jewelry?
In the
Since it
Russian
became-
oil, yeah, sure, extensively. extensively used there. Other people, normal people could not get alexandrites because the royals took them all.
Of course. Okay, thank you.
Thanks
I don't know
very
if
much.
anyone's got any.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
all.
very much for an amazing and thorough presentation, Dr. Seifert. That was a very well done presentation, one of our best. And I hope you enjoyed yourself while you were doing it. And I actually hope our audience
you.
enjoyed themselves as well, because it was very informative.
Good.
So thank
Yeah.
you for your time and for your presentation.
Thank you very much too.
Yeah, thank you,
And
Laura.
thank the audience for listening
Dr. Law.
patiently.
Good to see you, Lori. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Okay. I think that, Ray, we should announce the date and time for the next event.
Give me a second here. 1 second.
Well, I think that it will be the 25th of July.
Yep. It's the 25th of July.
Yes, at the same time,
Same
place.
time, and it will be about rubies. And if anybody knows of a good presenter on rubies, I would very much appreciate that lead, because I'm already starting my search for presenters for next month. So you have my email address. Anybody who knows someone who'd be a good presenter on rubies, I'd value that input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jolion.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, well, I think that unless anyone's got any last minute things, that concludes tonight's presentation. Thank you all for coming. And,
Thank
as
you
always,
very much for
Ray.
inviting us.
Yes.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Laura.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jolion.